Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at Seelenbräutigam, Jesu, Lamm, which translates to Bridegroom, Jesus, Lamb of God. This is a fairly straightforward chorale, really not too much to write home about in this one, so we're just going to hop right into the analysis. We have 3 sharps in the key signature. We start on A major, we end on A major. I reckon we're in the key of A major, and our first phrase ends in a half cadence. We start off with our tonic triad, like I said, passing tone in the bass. Then we have C sharp, E, and A, which is just taking our tonic triad and inverting it. No need to reiterate the Roman numeral. Passing tone in the bass, that takes us to E, B, E, and G sharp, which is our 5 chord, E major. Then we have A, C sharp, E, and A, which is our tonic triad, A major, passing tone in the alto here before we get E major again. E, E, G sharp, and B, which is our 5 chord. Moving on to the next phrase, it ends in a perfect authentic cadence, no modulations just yet. We're going to be in the key of A major all the way until the second system here, and it's not a very long chorale, but typically speaking we would expect more than just one modulation or more than one key center in a Bach chorale. Regardless, we start off the phrase with F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, and A, which is F sharp minor. You could analyze this as D major over F sharp as well if you see this D as the root of the chord, but I don't think it makes much of a difference. We then have G sharp, C sharp, E, and B. This is a bit of an interesting chord. I think that this C sharp is an accented non-chord tone and that this is actually a 5-6 chord where E is the root of our chord here, but I think you could analyze this as C sharp minor 7 over G sharp, which would be 3 in second inversion, and if that's the case I will just go back and say that you could analyze that as 4-6 as well. But either way, 6 going to 5-6 going to 1 is a fairly normative sort of stepwise progression, taking us from the 6th of the scale to the tonic of the scale. We then have A, E, and C sharp, this B being a 9/8 suspension over the tonic. It's very common to see 9/8 suspensions over tonic triads in root position, and usually, or maybe not usually, but that's to that same effect, we see a lot of 4/3 suspensions over the bass in root position dominant triads, E, G sharp, E, and B, this A being the 4/3 suspension. And then we get A major at the end, A, C sharp, E, and A, which is our tonic triad in root position. Next phrase ends in a half cadence, again just like our first phrase, except this one's a little bit longer. We have A major, A, E, A, and C sharp, no need to reanalyze, passing 7th on the bass. And then we have F sharp, A, and D, which is D major over F sharp, that's 4 in first inversion. We then get C sharp, E, A, and E, which is A major in first inversion. And then we get F sharp, A, and D, again, D major in first inversion. We also have 3 voices moving off of the harmonic rhythm here, so I reckon there is a chord progression happening here. We have G sharp, E, B, and D. That is a 5 chord in first inversion, more specifically a 5/7 chord, E7 over G sharp, that's 5/6/5, and that takes us to A major, A, E, A, and C sharp. Another 9/8 suspension over the tonic here, and then we get E major again, E, G sharp, and B, which is our 5 chord. G sharp here in the bass briefly takes our E major chord and puts it in first inversion. This B is also a chord tone, so we don't need to mark it. And then we get A, E, G, and C sharp. A, E, B, and C sharp, another 9/8 suspension over our tonic triad. This happens a lot in Bach's chorales. This isn't just local to this particular chorale, we see it all the time. And then we have A, which is our resolution, G sharp, which is a little enclosing 7th, a little neighbor tone here. That takes us to A major again, A, E, A, and C sharp, no need to reanalyze, and the phrase ends with our 5 chord, E, G sharp, and B. Okay, next phrase takes us to the key of F sharp minor, also ends in a half cadence. Lots of half cadences in this chorale. It's particularly unusual to see the ratio of half cadences to authentic cadences be in favor or more on the side of the half cadences, but that just happens to be the profile of this particular chorale and melody, which often cadences on the supertonic, which is a usual hallmark of the half cadence, is the fifth of the chord in the melody. So I think Bach is clearly emphasizing that. So moving to the next phrase, we start off with F sharp minor, perhaps foreshadowing what's happening harmonically in the future. F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, and A. It's our sixth chord. F sharp minor, E, E, G sharp, and B. That's our 5 chord. E major, and then we go to A major. A, E, A, and C sharp. Tonic triad, root position. We then go to E major again. E, E, G sharp, and B. Lots of 1s and 5s in this chorale. A little delayed passing 7th here in the form of D natural, moving to F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and A. So we see a 9/8 suspension here over our 6th chord, but coincidentally, I think this is also maybe just a little hint at the fact that Bach is moving to the key of F sharp minor, because it's, in my opinion, also operating as our tonic in the key of F sharp minor, because F sharp is the tonic in the key of F sharp. That doesn't really need to be said, but for the sake of, I guess, explaining this 9/8 suspension in conjunction with all the other 9/8 suspensions we've seen, I think that's pretty neat. That takes us to C sharp, C sharp, E sharp, and G sharp, this F being a 4/3 suspension over our dominant, just like we saw earlier over here in anticipation for our perfect authentic cadence. And that takes us to F sharp major, F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, and A. Tonic triad. Passing tone in the bass, neighbor tone here in the alto before we get A, C sharp, F sharp, and A, which is inverting our tonic triad, just like the beginning of our chorale. And also here we have A, C sharp, E sharp, and A, which is kind of like a contrapuntally passing augmented triad, but I don't really hear it that way. I feel like this E sharp feels more like an embellishment than anything else, kind of like a series of just neighbor tones here, almost like a deliberate 8th note trill, kind of slow, but regardless. Passing tone in the bass here before we get C sharp, C sharp, E sharp carried from earlier in the measure, and G sharp, this F sharp being a 4/3 suspension over our dominant triad. Really, this chorale could be the like the poster child for Bach's usage of 9/8 suspensions and 4/3 suspensions over tonic and dominant triads. If I wanted to make that point, I think I'm going to tuck it into my back pocket for that particular reason. But regardless, next phrase is going to take us back to the key of A major for the rest of the chorale. We end with another half cadence. We start with F sharp minor, which is resolving our half cadence, I assume. F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, and A. It's our, sorry, I was thinking ahead there. It is our tonic triad in the key of F sharp minor, and also our 6th chord in the key of A major. That takes us to C sharp, E natural, and A, which is our tonic triad and first inversion. 6 going to 1's kind of a quirky progression from a Roman numeral perspective, but in this similar bass motion, the fact that it has a similar bass motion to 4/6 going to 1, which looks a lot more normative from a Roman numeral perspective, that's really all I think is different between these two phrases. Is if this C sharp were a D, it would be a 4/6 going to 1, which I wouldn't even consider, but 6 going to 1 sounds, I don't know, just a little bit more interesting to me based on my relationship with the harmony. We have a passing tone in the bass as well before we go to E major, E, B, E, and G sharp. It's our 5 chord. That takes us to A major over C sharp, C sharp, A, E, and A. It's 1/6. A is a chord tone, so we don't need to mark it, and that takes us to our 5 chord in root position, E, A, E, and B. It's A being a 4/3 suspension, this G sharp being the 3rd of the chord. And lastly, our final cadence ends in the key of A major. We have F sharp, A, C sharp, and A, which is another 6 chord. D is a non-chord tone, and F sharp is a chord tone, so we don't need to mark it, but we do have kind of like a 4/6 chord here, which is very similar to 6. It doesn't really feel like a chord progression, but because two voices are moving and they're leaping, it kind of feels significant. So I put it down in the analysis, and it also starts this idea of like 4-6 going to 5-6 going to 1 like we saw here, but also, I mean, like to that same effect we also saw 4-6 going to 5-6 going to 1 here as well. So I feel like this material is very similar to what we saw in the second phrase, and coincidentally the second phrase is of similar length, actually identical length, and it's the only other phrase with a perfect authentic cadence. So maybe this is some type of B prime phrase. The melody looks similar as well. So there's like a 4-6/6 going on here. The only thing that's different is the fact that two voices are moving rather than one. We then have G sharp, C sharp, E, and B. Yeah, okay, it's starting to make sense here. You could analyze this as a 3-4-3 chord, but I do think this C sharp is an accented non-chord tone, and this is actually just 5-6. It makes a little bit more sense narratively speaking. And then 5-6 takes us to 1, A, E, and C sharp. E is a chord tone, A is a chord tone, so we don't have to mark either of those. We then get E, G sharp, and B, which is our 5 chord. A is an anticipation, and D is a delayed passing 7th before we cadence on A major. A, C sharp, E, and A. Tonic triad, root position, and that's today's analysis. Bach wrote a chorale with like really only 4 chords. We have our tonic, our 4, our 5, and our 6, which is pretty remarkable. No 2s. Maybe there's an argument for 3, but I think that's more of like a contrapuntal coincidence than anything else. But yeah, definitely interesting in regards to the fact that there isn't a lot of chordal variety. 6 and 4 are really in most cases operating like the same thing. Kind of like one can be substituted for another because they're so similar to each other regarding their pitch content. But yeah, there really isn't anything too noteworthy about this chorale other than the like the homogeneity of the chords, and maybe the fact that there are as many half cadences in it as there are in proportion to the authentic cadences, which is usually the reverse. Usually there are as many authentic cadences in a chorale as there are half cadences in this chorale. So not really something that I'm looking for in my particular research, or my area of research particularly, but it is something that you can't help but notice. So I think I'm going to cap this video off on that thought and leave it short for today because it is a short chorale. If you're interested in following me along on the journey to analyze all of Bach's chorale harmonizations, feel free to subscribe to the channel. You could also like the video and hit the notification icon if you enjoyed the content. Thank you so much for watching the video and supporting the channel by doing so. I look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.